This week's video, I'm going to be sculpting the little knight as a polymer clay diorama, saving the little grub from a collector's jar. So if you're a Hollow Knight fan and love grubs as much as I do, let's get started. For this project, I'm using a snow globe glass ornament with a little hook at the bottom, and because of the hook, I'm going to drill a hole in my base to secure it properly. Next, I apply a layer of liquid Sculpey to my wood base to give my ultralight clay something to stick to. Once I have the liquid Sculpey all spread out, I take my ultralight clay and I add it on top, being sure to make sure I have a space for the hole where my ornament is going to go. When my ultralight clay is fully smoothed out, I put it in the oven to bake, and then I put a layer of Super Sculpey on top to add my details. I decided to go with the Forgotten Crossroads biome, and because there's a lot of cobblestones, I take some balls of clay to create those cobblestones on the ground. Then I take my little ornament and I place it in place to make sure that there's plenty of space for it to be fully secured, and then I finish off all the cobblestones. Once my cobblestones are all in place, I use my spoon tools to blend them into the base. Then once I'm finished with all my cobblestones, I put it in the oven for another bake. Once it's baked and out of the oven, I give the cobblestones a base coat of a nice black paint color. Next, I roll out some ultralight clay to create the inside of my grub. You can also do this with foil, but I was lazy and didn't want to. After I pull it out of the oven, I cover it in a layer of Sculpey Primo because I decided maybe I would try not painting the grub just to see if I liked it better. Once the base is completely covered and I have the basic shape of my grub, I take some little clay noodles to create the little bumps on the back of the grub's back. Once I did the little second bump on his back, I realized I made it a little bit too thick, so I had to thin it out and then make a third little bump on the back. For the grub's belly color, I had to custom mix this color between a few different of my colored clays, but I place it on his belly and then I blend it in as nicely as I can. And when I have his belly in place, then I take the little tiny feetsies and I place them right where they go to make him look like the happy little grub that's being rescued. Next, I take an upside down U-shaped piece of clay to make his mouth, and then I blend it into his face. Then I finish off my little grub by adding some black circles for the eyes on both sides of his head. Then I place him in to make sure he fits and then put him in the oven to bake. Now that my grub is finished and glued to the ornament, I'm going to add some clay to the top to create the little top of the jar that he's collected in. Once I have the base of my jar top finished, I add a smaller circle on top and I blend it in. Then to finish off the lid aesthetic, I roll a piece of clay into kind of a hook-shaped piece, and then I add a little armature wire and then I place it on top of my jar. Then I blend the handle into the jar and put it in the oven for a bake. Once it's finished baking, I add a base coat of black to the lid itself before I dry brush it on top. I decided before I started to dry brush, I would start the armature for my little knight, and I just take some wire for the horns and the sword and legs, and then I apply a layer of ultralight on top and then put it in the oven to bake. While the base of my little knight is baking, I take some different colors of grays and I dry brush them on my lid and the cobblestones of the base. Since the little knight is mostly dark colors with a helmet or horned mask of white, I decided to cover the entire body in a black primo clay, and then I would just paint a white coat over his mask helmet thing. Next, I use a needle tool to create the little hooks or whatever at the ends of his horns, and then I use my ball tool to create the eyes of his mask. Then I finish off the entire little knight base by adding some clay to the arm wire, and I create the arm and the nail shape. To add a little bit more of a sharper edge shape to the nail, I decided to sand it down to make it look more like the little knight's nail. To finish off the sculpting portion of the little knight, I used some cosplay medium firm sculpt, and I just apply it to his neck and I blend it in as best as I can. Then I take some little clay noodles and I apply them on top to create the little ripples in his little cape. One thing I absolutely love about cosplay is how well it holds its shape once you start sculpting with it, because I'm not holding this cape in place. It's holding its shape all on its own, and it's absolutely amazing. Plus, it has a little bit of bendability after baked as well. Now that he is fully baked, I paint a few layers of white on his mask to create that Hollow Knight mask look that he has. And because I got a little messy around his eyes, I'm going to paint a little bit of black to make sure that there's no white there. For his cape, I'm using a dark gray, not necessarily black, but a dark grayish color, and I paint the entire thing that color, and then I dry brush some lighter grays on top. Now the last thing that I have to do is paint his little nail gray, and he'll be good to go, and I'll put him in place and he'll be ready for the glamour shots. And there you have it, the little knight saving the grub from the collector's jar. Saving the grubs is one of my absolute favorite parts of the game. They are so cute and adorable, and they need to be set free. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you are a Hollow Knight fan, leave a comment. Let me know what is some of your favorite parts of the game. Have a great day, and remember to stay crafty.